I'm also moved by it.
Yes. Yes, tell me about that. What moves you?
You talking to me?
I hope you die. That'll be the day.
Talk about John Ford and his masterpiece, quote unquote, The Searchers on Pretentious Film Bros podcast. That'll be the day. Welcome back. As I'm Brady Odom, joined here with my co-host Nolan Jones. Here at Pretentious Film Bros podcast, it is our mission and our obligation, our duty, however you want to see it, to break down stereotypes and build connections through film. If you've been following, you know that we've been going through a John Ford film marathon. We have picked 6 different films in the very, very quantitative filmography of John Ford. And we have decided to go with very popular ones, classics, underseen gems, if you will. I don't know if I would call Mogambo a gem, but you'll have to watch the episode to see how we really feel about it. And this week, as we've been going in chronological order of the 6 that we have chosen, this week we're discussing The Searchers, arguably John Ford's most appreciated, most well-known, most vibrant, beautiful film in his filmography, which is ironic because it happens to be one of the few that's not nominated for an Oscar, which is a little baffling to me because you watch this movie and whether you like it or not, you just feel like it's almost like Oscar bait, especially with the opening and bookending shot. So, with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and give us a quick synopsis of the film itself. If you've not seen it, spoilers, of course, as always, as we'll continue to dive into different themes, elements, characters, dialogue, and fun facts, trivia about the movie The Searchers. But first, as I've said, the synopsis of John Ford's 1956 hit, The Searchers. 3 years after the Civil War, battle-scarred Confederate veteran Ethan Edwards returns to his brother Aaron's remote Texas homestead. But instead of finding peace, the soldier finds tragedy when the murderous raiding party of the ruthless Comanche Chief Scar massacres his family, burns the ranch to the ground, and abducts his 9-year-old niece, Debbie. Fearing the worst, Ethan and his young companion, Martin Polly, embark on a dangerous 5-year odyssey to rescue the girl. Fueled by hatred and a thirst for vengeance, however, as the searchers ride through the unforgiving desert to track down their lost Debbie, they must confront their own demons and answer an unvoiced question. Is the woman they seek the same woman they knew? So, of course, it's 5 years. It's a 5-year span of a film. And I won't get too deep into my thoughts as I'll let you into that. But I will say that was one thing that I had a little bit of a hard time keeping track of. Because when they open, they give you a title card and they give you a time. Because it is actually inspired based on a true event of a woman that was kidnapped by a Native American tribe. However, when you watch it, you see how maybe some time is passing, especially as you watch the characters, you watch the elements are a big hint to that, and other things that occur. So, Nolan, if you would like to go ahead and start by giving your thoughts, your opinion, your rating, ultimately somewhere in the range of your rating, I would say, as I know you recently watched this one. I've had a few more days to sit with it than you have, but I would just like to hear what do you think about John Ford's The Searchers?
Yeah, well, like you said, I just was able to catch it last night, the night before recording this podcast. Barely was able to squeeze it in. I wanted to catch it earlier in the weekend so I'd have some more time to kind of mull over the story because I knew going into The Searchers, this is one of the big episodes of our marathon. This is one that people who know John Ford, who know John Wayne, who know the Western, they're really going to be serious about what we have to say about The Searchers. So a lot of my thoughts are still rough. They're still forming. Um, and I'm hoping that maybe tonight you can help me kind of form some of those thoughts even more as we have this discussion, since you've had more time to sit with this film. The first thing that I will say right off the bat, which I actually found quite interesting, is my wife actually favored this film, I think, more than I did. And that's not to say that I didn't favor this film or I don't think that this is a worthy film. But even just at the end of the night when we were talking about it, she seemed to have more of a desire to want to revisit the film. You know, that's the question. It's like, well, how did you like the film? Oh, it was good. Makes sense. Okay, everybody says that. Well, would you watch the film again? Yeah, I probably could watch it again. Okay, great. Now we're getting a little more of a level. Would you pay money so that you could watch this film again? And she was like, yeah, I think it's worth owning in our collection, in our very nice, expansive collection back there of all kinds of crazy movies. So that to me was really the surprise. We said, yeah, I'd like to own this film. I think it's worth paying money for and rewatching, because Westerns are not a genre she's really watched a lot of. They're not a genre that I've watched a ton of, but they're certainly not one that she gravitates towards. So the fact that she was willing to say, yeah, I could see us pay money for this film so that we could have it in our collection and watch it again, kind of cues me in to know that she was a little more favorable on this film, even if maybe our rankings or our official thoughts are more aligned. So anyways, all that fun trivia information out of the way. The first thing that really captures you about The Searchers is the setting. This film is gorgeous. And if for nothing else, it's just beautiful to watch. It is a Western. So, of course, you've got those beautiful Western landscapes. But it is a Technicolor Western, which means you see the blues of the skies, you see the browns of the sand, you see the white of the snow as the seasons change, which blew my mind how much snow they were getting in Texas in the 1800s, where now if Texas were to get that much snow, they'd think that the end of the world was nigh. But it's a beautifully shot, beautifully crafted visual film. The colors are so vibrant. They bring you into the world, into that American West in the into the 1860s. And it's not even just the landscape. It's the colors of John Wayne's outfit, of Ethan's shirts and his hats. It's the burning sunsets that look like the sky's on fire. So The Searchers is an absolutely gorgeous film. I mean, it is every frame is worthy of a painting in the Chicago Museum of Art. It's gorgeous. It is the American West right there on your TV screen. And if for nothing else, The Searchers is worth at least a one-time visit just to see the beauty of the world that John Ford was able to capture on camera. It's absolutely breathtaking. And it serves the story as well. But yeah, so this is a story of John Wayne's Ethan, who the minute you meet him, we get a man who's very rough and ragged, and he doesn't really take orders from anybody except himself. And when he first showed up on the screen, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be an interesting guy. This is going to be a character that is going to be up there for one of John Wayne's best characters. And of course, I'm thinking of the Ringo Kid from Stagecoach. And in my mind, I'm looking at how does Ethan stack up with the Ringo Kid? Constantly thinking about those two characters, the strengths and the weaknesses of each, the good and the bad within each, within their character, their morals, the way they portray themselves. And Ethan is a very different character than Ringo Kid, because Ringo Kid is an outlaw, but he's this outlaw that's got a pretty solid moral compass and really a heart of gold. Whereas Ethan is a Confederate soldier, which you could already argue there his morals already aren't that great. But even this is a man that was a soldier. He served his country at the time. He served the Southern Confederate States. That was their country. You didn't come here for a history lesson, so we're going to move on. But this is a man that you would expect to know honor, to stand under commands, to know what it is to receive an order and to execute that order. And from the minute you meet Ethan, you realize he's really not that man. In fact, he's far less honorable of a man than the Ringo Kid. At least in the first few minutes of me being introduced to him, these were some of the things that I thought as I compared those two John Wayne characters. So, and I'm working through this film in real time. I see it here now, and I'm just kind of rambling on a little bit. I think The Searchers is one of John Ford's quintessential films for a reason. I think if you are going to have a John Ford marathon, if you're going to want to dive deeper into who John Ford was as a director, The Searchers is a film that you have to engage with. Because it's on the top for a reason, right? Mm-hmm. And that's baffling to me that it is his film that was not nominated for an Oscar, period, where Mogambo was nominated for 2. Not just 1, but 2. And it's a night and day difference between Mogambo and The Searchers. You just know with John Wayne, with that Western revenge story, that John Ford really is back in his element. He's back in that realm of American history and of filmmaking and storytelling and character creating that he just has always excelled at, that he made famous, that he really made meaningful and impactful in the American film history. So as far as the searching journey, as far as the journey that Ethan and Martin go on, looking for his niece, every moment of that I loved. I thought, to me, that was when The Searchers was firing on all cylinders. When they were out there, when they were searching, when they were around the campfire, when they were trekking through the snow, when they were running from the Comanche, all of those moments, all of those scenes was where this movie really shined for me. The parts that I'm still wrestling with is the B plot. And to put that in not fancy cinema nerd terms, the B plot is it's that story it's not the main story, but it kind of supports the main story, or it's underneath, or it's happening at the same time as that main story. So in The Searchers, your main story, it's John Wayne looking for his niece. Mm-hmm. It is the searching. It is the 5-year journey, come hell or high water, looking for Debbie. But this B story that they weave in seamlessly, not so seamlessly, we can discuss, is a story between Martin and a young woman named Lori, who is the daughter of a Swedish immigrant family that was close to Ethan's brother, that was close to their family. That they knew Debbie, they knew the girls, they knew Ethan's brother and his wife. So then they knew Ethan, and they were connected to him. But it's this romance forming between Martin and Lori, this relationship that she even says, we've been going steady since we were 3 years old. It's this relationship that you get the feeling has a lot of history, even though Martin's a little clueless as to how long this relationship has been what it is. And it's the way that they tie that searching for Debbie in with that story of the romance budding between Martin and Lori, and Martin's constant need to be with Ethan and to be out there searching for Debbie, and how that comes into conflict with his wanting to deepen his relationship with Lori, because they're both characters that are well into their 20s. At this point, they're at the age of getting married, especially in the 1800s. And it's where those stories try to balance each other and where they weave in and out with one another. That's the part of The Searchers that I find I'm still wrestling with. that I'm not sure how seamlessly or how effortlessly it all kind of really tied together for me. So maybe that's something that you can help me talk through. Of course, with that in mind, the film felt a little long. I mean, you take out that B plot completely, and you've probably got an hour and 40 minutes, maybe less. Maybe you've got something closer to the length of Stagecoach, which I'm not here to argue would have made the film better. In fact, it probably would have hindered the film. I'm not going to argue with John Ford in this case. This is not a Mongambo where I can say, no, this was wrong. This comes purely down to preference. So for me to put a nice bow on all those rambly thoughts as I'm still processing through this film, I would put John Ford strongly in a 3-star film. Or not John Ford. John Ford's The Searchers strongly as a 3-star film. Possibly even should be bumped up to a 4, just for the beauty aspects and the parts of the story that really do work, the searching parts of the story. But for now, it's sitting somewhere around a high 3, 6, 7 out of 10 kind of range for me.
Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts. I appreciate you working your way through it. I understand you were searching for the words as you were trying to describe The Searchers, and I think that that's admirable on your part. And I think
Tell me, which way is the door for you?
Don't worry about that. So I think that the things you were able to hit on and the feelings you have towards the A plot versus the B plot, I think are very warranted. In fact, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that you could argue in the B plot there is some element of searching for that person that you've been searching so long for, something that exists right in front of you, for something that is bringing you to the person you're supposed to be, the same way John Wayne's Ethan is doing the same thing, searching for something that's supposed to bring him that solace in who he is. And I think I think that's the only way, and there might be a more intelligent way that I'm impossible, I'm not smart enough to really hone in on at this point in time. But I agree with you. I think the B plot is the weaker part of this story for a number of reasons. I think the B plot is the weaker part of the story because I don't think Vera Miles, or not Debbie, Lori. I don't think she's a very good actor. I think her performance is pretty weak. And okay. I think that I felt it was overacted so much. There were so many points in time where it was overacted, especially when you initially received the letter and she crumples it up, is like, ooh, and throws it in the fire. And it was just very over dramatic and not funny, not appealing to me. I thought, in fact, a lot of the problems I had with the movie The Searchers was the acting. I think the acting on the front end of the story is pretty bad too. I think that the older sister, when she screams at the very beginning, it's funny you mentioned your wife watched it with you. My wife kind of watched it, but she had other things she was doing. But I think what was funny is when you mentioned that your wife was watching it, my wife looked up at the screen and was like, what is she screaming at? And I was like, I think the idea of the impending doom that's coming, because she's not looking at anything. There's nothing she sees yet. There's nothing that's even happened yet. She's just yelling.
Screaming. Mm-hmm.
And they try to do the zoom in shot to make it seem so dramatic. And I don't buy it for a second. I'm like, okay, that's not really that. I don't know. That just didn't seem that necessary to me. I think that it was definitely over the top and performed poorly. That being said, on the flip side of bad acting from, I think, Lori and this older sister, her name's escaping me at this time. Do you remember Lucy? The older sister's name? Debbie's older sister.
I believe it was Lucy.
Lucy. Okay. Yeah, she. Other than those two, I would say John Wayne is incredible. He is truly the. This is one of the better Western performances I've seen. As this cynical, hardened, hateful, no bullcrap Confederate, ex-Confederate soldier, however you want to title him.
Yeah.
This is someone who has seen it, and he has nothing. He has nothing left in the tank. There is no room for compassion. There's no room for mercy, right? So much
Even
so,
for people almost in his own family,
yes.
even for his brother and his wife, and especially for Martin.
Mm.
I mean, when he first comes on the scene with Martin,
Yeah,
and the remarks he has to him, which
I
we'll
think
get into, I'm sure.
yes, of course, and I think that for him, what I think John Ford did really excellent in this film is he threw us into the middle of it, right? And at the very opening shot, you have one of the best opening shots I've ever seen in a movie. I would argue it's in top 10 territory. That opening shot is truly something astonishing. You have the prodigal brother returning home, which I immediately thought of whenever you see him walking up. All these people running to their doorstep, ready to greet him, right? That's big
Yeah.
prodigal son homage, like imagery, right? These people are excited to see him.
Yeah.
Even if he doesn't seem to be the same person he was before. And in fact, John Ford did such a good job of throwing us into the middle of it. I legitimately thought it was a sequel and that I missed what the original was because I thought John Wayne's character was so ingrained, it was so perfect.
Yeah.
From the jump that I really thought, oh, we've seen him before. That this is a guy that the history of his character, the history of his family, the history of what he's gone through, it seemed so established.
Yeah.
And for me, that's where I was like, if it wasn't done so well, I actually wouldn't have thought it was a sequel, and I think I wouldn't have appreciated it as much as I do because it just was the textbook definition of throwing you in the middle of the story, right? He did such a great job establishing a background without saying anything about the background. And I would argue that's a trait you can't teach. I think that's something that is just the marking of a true director, someone who is a really just terrific storyteller like John Ford is, right? Because I would argue it's not in the script. I don't think that's in the script. I think that's in the direction. I think it's in the way he led with us in the editing. I think it's the introduction of the John Wayne character. I think everything about it is John Ford's ability to craft that story, right? And that's, at least in my opinion, what I am seeing in this moment. I think the story itself, the A plot, is a beautiful story. It's one of cynicism turning into sentimentality. The shot where he picks up Debbie at the very beginning to the shot where he picks up Debbie at the very end is truly just breathtaking work. And you immediately feel that resolve from what John Wayne's character needed, what Ethan needed, you get to where he shows up on the scene with the door opening to where he leaves with the door closing. We've been separated this whole time from the brute force of the elements of the world, of the territory of the quote unquote villains in the Comanche, that now you see his whole character is shifted. He's changed. And it's hard to tell if his character shifted whenever he picked up Debbie the second time or if it had already shifted. I think I think the idea is that it shifted whenever he picked her up, right? But I think being with Martin truly did soften him more than he would ever admit. And I think that this idea that he was going to kill his niece because she's been brainwashed, thankfully that idea got thrown out with the bathwater, because that was ridiculous. I understand in the fact that he's supposed to be this racist, just
Right.
like hateful old man. But when I'm like, you're going to kill your niece, you're going to kill her. You'd rather her be dead than be with the Comanche. I think that that is absolutely asinine and ridiculous. So I'm glad that that's not what happened. And I think the ending was a lot better than what it could have been. But without diving too deep into all of those themes and messaging, I'll say my final rating is 4 stars. I think this is a high quality Western. I think it's a high quality film. I think it's really enjoyable to watch. I think it's a tad convoluted. And I think that it could benefit from some trimming of the B plot. And I think that there should have been someone that really spoke to these actors better than what John Ford did, because I don't know who let them perform the way they performed, but it ultimately comes down to him, and I think that he just did not catch it. So with that being said, that's my rating as of right now. I was in between a 3 to a 5 at some point during the movie, to then I finally have settled on a 4. I think that this is a great film. I think it would be great to own. I think it's really rewatchable, and I think on a rewatch I could appreciate it more. But yeah, so those are my thoughts. What do you say we discuss characters
I
and
think that sounds like a great plan.
how they impacted the story?
Let's do it. Shall we begin with the man, the myth, the legend himself?
I think we should. Who better else to start with?
All right, let's do it. So we've talked a lot about Ethan in general, just kind of how he was, how he comes into the story. And you're right, that opening shot with that prodigal son, that prodigal brother returning, is not only beautiful, is not only tell us almost everything we need to know about Ethan and his relationship with his family, but it was actually so good that I don't know if you picked up on this or not. I felt it watching the scene. And then I had to look it up to see if I was correct in my feeling. But this shot was stolen by Quentin Tarantino for the opening of Inglourious Bastards.
It's funny you say Tarantino, because I didn't think of Tarantino. I thought of Pearl.
Okay.
From the shot from the barn door. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep, no, I do.
Where you think that you're watching it in a certain aspect ratio and then it turns into something else. And so, but it makes sense that Tarantino stole from it because, look at the shot. No, there are some directors who will never achieve that. And he achieved it in the 1950s.
Yep.
And now anybody who even tries to remotely touch that shot, it will only harken back to the Searchers.
Yep.
So anyway, but that I did not pick up on Inglourious Bastards, but I did think about Pearl.
Yeah. No, and it was actually the one that I actually thought of was Kill Bill, which actually there was some. It wasn't Kill Bill when I looked it up. It was Inglourious Bastards, where Shoshana, the Jewish woman, is fleeing from Hans, fleeing from the Nazi officer right there at the begin or the climax of the film. So it's that doorway shot where she's fleeing, and he is there. I believe he's there watching her flee. But yeah, from the moment that the film started, I immediately thought of Tarantino. And I knew that John Ford was one that he had stolen from, which kind of helped to give me a leg up. As I saw that shot, I was like, I wonder if this was one of those shots that he stole. And by and large, it was. So that was fun. So yeah, that opening shot and even the closing shot, the way it opens and closes the film is absolutely perfect. But here you've got John Wayne riding in, and he's ex-Confederate soldier, still a Confederate soldier. If you asked him, he would probably tell you he was still a Confederate soldier. Yet, he has a line to the Reverend where he says, "A man can only take one. He's only good for one oath at a time," which leads me to believe that Wayne still saw himself as a Confederate soldier. But he's returning to his family not after the war, but 3 years after the war. So the war had been over for quite some time, and he had still chosen to stay away until finally he's come to rejoin his family. And you really don't know what his intentions are. You don't know why he's come back all of a sudden. It really does just throw you in to the character. And immediately you realize that Ethan is he's this hardened man, right? Like we've talked about. He's very cynical. He's seen almost too much. But then he's there with his nieces, and there's this tenderness to Ethan that he has with those girls, especially when he picks up Debbie. And then he goes and he gives Debbie the medal when she asks later that night when they're gathered around the campfire. And he's got this tenderness that he feels for these girls. But he is still this man who he is his own law. You see that very early in the film. You see that when the preacher comes and he tries to deputize the men in the family. And John Wayne says, "No, I'm going, and I'm going to do it my way." You see it through that first search with the cattle. You see it throughout when they go to look for the girls right after the attack on the homestead. John Wayne is a man, Ethan is a man who he is his own law, and it's either do it his way or you're going to get run over. And really, that was for me very entertaining, especially early on in the film, to see this very different side of the John Wayne cowboy, of the John Wayne mythos being portrayed as to where what we saw in Stagecoach. And really, it makes me excited for what we're going to see in the future, even with this marathon, because we've got one more John Wayne performance that we'll get to see how all three of those how those will stack up and compare with each other in the end. So I'm really excited to see that. But Ethan's a complicated character, right? He's one that you really want to root for, but you also kind of have a hard time rooting for this man. You root for him to succeed because you want Debbie to come home. And at first, it's Lucy and Debbie both. Both girls are kidnapped, and both girls are taken away from the destroying of their homestead, from the burning and the murder of their parents and their brother. But then as they go on the journey the first time, he finds Lucy's body in a canyon. So now the only person that may or may not be left is Debbie. And she really becomes finding Debbie, and maybe even more than finding Debbie, but I think taking vengeance against the Comanche really becomes John Wayne's obsession. And that's really what drives him through the rest of this film. In his dealings with other people, in his dealings with Martin, and just in the way that he makes decisions, in the way that he moves on, even to where, as you mentioned, we get to the end of the film, they found Debbie, and he is about ready to kill her because she has been Comancheified, for lack of an actual real word that would explain what has happened. So he's a tough man, and I think maybe people have always had hard relationships with Wayne's Ethan. Maybe this is just something that in our 2026 mentality that we have a hard time looking at the character of Ethan and the way that he speaks and the way that he acts and the way that he treats those around him. But maybe he's always been one of those characters that's kind of challenging in all the ways that we've talked about, and the ways that he views the Comanche, and the ways that he views even the white people around him.
Anyone, how he views anyone.
Yeah, anybody, period.
He's cynical towards the world. And I think, if I'm not cutting you off, I think I just wanted to attest to that character of John Wayne. Because I think what's interesting is, I don't know if you know this, but when I was looking at history on the film, history, like just interesting facts,
Mm-hmm.
John Wayne named his final son after his character in The Searchers because he believed it to be his best role. He believed it to not only be his best role, but he believed it to be his best performance and his favorite movie he'd ever acted in. And I think that comes through so clearly in how devoted Wayne is to this performance. Now, of course, you can't give all the credit to John Wayne because you do have John Ford on the other end of the camera.
Right.
And one of the other things I had looked up that was pretty interesting that I think is becoming more obvious when it comes to auteur directors is like a Stanley Kubrick with a Shelley Duvall, but most likely not to the same extent as he is in The Shining. John Ford purposefully irritated John Wayne to get that gritty feeling from him. And in fact, he would purposefully antagonize him and make him question his masculinity and his behavior, who he was as a person.
Wow.
And I do think that you can argue, right, like any of the greats, Tobe Hooper, who directed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the level that he put through his main character in Sally, the things that he did to get the performance that he got, you can always argue is too far. But then you watch the movie and you're like, hey, Sally, that's a pretty dang good performance you got there. But would he have had it without the pressure of the director? And I think John Wayne, I think he's a good actor, but I think that that's about as far as it goes. This performance is not only a good performance, it's an amazing performance. And the whole movie, right? I think it's a testament to his character as well, because when we deviate from him to the B plot, which is a love story,
right?
You don't care as much. You're like, I want to see John Wayne again. I want to see Ethan again because he's compelling. Not Martin, right? Marty he's not the reason you're watching that. You're not watching it for him. You're watching it because John Wayne is just, I get it. I get what my grandpa, why he loved him. He's a gruff, just what you imagine just a cynical man to be, who also just seems to have a heart that has just been hardened by so much that's gone on in the world, right? And you see that through his racist language. That's one of the things that I'm sure we'll talk about later on, is how politically incorrect this film really is. In fact, the most out of the four we watched so far, there were a lot of times where I was like, ooh, that would not that I am personally offended by it. I think you have to take everything into context. But
you look at Letterboxd and you see how many people were offended by this film.
I mean, I'm sure. I mean, and you look at it and you're like, man, it was a different time back then, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, it's not even that, too. Like, this film was made in the 1950s, but it takes place in the 1800s.
I think that that's another thing that people forget to remember. And it's interesting. I'll say it this way, because you'll watch a movie like 12 Years a Slave and you won't question the use of the N-word.
Right.
Because, it was during slavery. Or Django Unchained. You won't question it. Because, it was slavery. And it was like, well, then why are we questioning it here when this was the nature of what was going on at this time? Why would we question it? So for me, but it is shocking. I will give it that.
Shocking.
It is baffling, because when you watch a movie like this today, in this time and era that we're in currently, culturally, you are a little taken aback. You're like, okay. And it's mostly due to Ethan's character. But
it's 100% due to Ethan's character.
Ethan's character still is what this movie hangs on. Yeah. And I think not only did it impact him as far as his performance goes, but it impacted him personally so much he named his son after the role. So much that he values this so highly in his extensive filmography as well. Right. Yeah. And he's worked with John Ford, Ringo Kid, right? He's worked with John Ford before. He's worked with John Ford a number of times after, and this one is still the one that he hangs his hat on at the end of the day. And I do think that that says something about his character. And something else that was interesting, I don't know if you know this or not, because I did not pick up on this at all. And if you did, I will give you high props. And I would even give it to Michaela, your wife, too, because I think she would be one who could pick up on this.
Oh, she would notice it long before I would.
But even if she didn't, that's okay, because it is very glaringly missing for me.
Okay.
But John Wayne, in an interview, discussed that John Ford had hinted through different things that Ethan had an affair with his brother's wife, and that Lucy and Debbie are possibly his own children.
I had not read that.
And so you read that and you're like, it would make sense why he's so devoted to getting these people, because yes, they are his nieces, but I think it means something different if it's his daughters. Right. And I think that you see the connection he has with the girls when he shows up, that even if he doesn't remember who they are, they're drawn to him. Right. That's the other thing too about Ethan's character is everybody's drawn to him.
Yep.
They are fascinated by him, which I don't think is unrealistic. I think that's a very realistic thing for a character like him, because he is so tough, but you want to love him. You want him to be okay, and you know he's hurting.
Yep.
And I think that Ethan's character, to this point in our John Ford marathon, he has been my favorite character to watch. And I think it's because you're waiting. He's a loose cannon. You don't know what he's going to do.
You're wondering if he's going to explode.
When you're watching the movie too, you see things at the beginning. They burn down their house and kill their family. Mm-hmm. So you're like, well, okay, what are they not willing to do in this movie? So when he's going to shoot her, you're like, he might. Like you're not sitting there like, oh, we're in a different world now. We're watching a Western. It's easy, go lucky. It's like, no, he might kill his niece, or in this case, possibly his daughter. That is crazy to me. And I think John Ford and John Wayne did incredible making that believable that this could possibly happen.
Yeah.
So unless you have anything else to add about Ethan, I think it's good we started with him. He's easily going to be the most talked about character in this whole thing.
Easily.
Because for me, I don't even want to talk about Lori. I think her whole subplot, to be quite honest, could be a big throwaway for me. I really did not like her. I really didn't. I didn't like anything about her. I thought
I can understand that.
The relationship she was going to have with, what's his name? Charlie. Yeah.
Yeah.
That to me was so, he started playing a song to her, but that was so out of left field that they're going to get married. What are you talking about?
Yeah. And I think that relationship was one that they built a lot off camera. Or she's desperate and Martin's never coming back and her father's trying to marry her off. So here's this guy. Might as well settle. And I think that's how they were building that, that around. And you get that feeling that she is settling for who's there. She doesn't want to be with that guy. You don't want to be around that guy.
But he
speaks
funny.
No English, no good.
Well, and I actually did appreciate that, because if you noticed, and that'll be something we talk into later, Debbie is literate.
Yeah.
And I kept wondering, I'm like, why are they wanting her to read the letter so bad? Because they're not as literate as her. Mm-mm. She can actually read the letter. And I was like, oh, I really appreciate that. Yeah. So I did appreciate that aspect of Laurie's character.
Right.
But I did not like the Laurie character. There is one funny thing about this movie, though, that I think is absolutely hysterical. It's maybe one of my favorite John Ford scenes.
Okay.
It's when Marty does not realize that he's purchased a wife. And John Wayne, Ethan, he's like, you didn't buy her blanket. You bought her. And I was
Not just a wife, an
Yeah.
Indian wife.
Yes, he's now bought. Oh,
For
that
a whole
to
hat.
me. I
For
think
a
they
top
called
hat.
her. Say that again.
Was it a top hat that he bought her for?
Yeah, for his hat. Yeah.
It was the top hat.
Yeah. And I thought that was hysterical.
What's she following us for?
Oh, you go on back now. Go on. Oh, look, I changed my mind. You can keep your blanket. Oh, look, you don't understand. I don't want it.
When John Wayne starts giving him such a hard time, Ethan starts giving Marty such a hard time because he didn't realize he purchased a woman. And it has a scene later on that I was completely baffled by when he kicked her down the hill. And I was like, where did that come from? Like, what?
Yeah, that was that whole part of the Searchers was great. That was easily one of the funniest parts. Like you said, maybe one of just the funniest John Ford segments that we've had throughout this marathon.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that soon. But I just, in relation to the Lori, Marty, Charlie love triangle, if you even want to call it that, because Charlie ends up having enough self-respect that he calls off the wedding. Yeah. He's like, there ain't going to be no wedding. Away. It's like, this is not, you get your mind right. There's not going to be no wedding. And I appreciate that about him. I actually really enjoyed his character.
Yeah.
I don't know how you felt about the Charlie character. He's weird. He's
weird and he's a goof and he's a little uncomfy, but you're right. He had enough self-respect and self-awareness to know that I'm walking away from this.
And you got to give him at least that credit, right?
Absolutely.
You got to at least give him that credit. I think Debbie sort of operates in the realm of a Clementine, from My Darling Clementine, because she's the catalyst for this story, right? If Debbie's not missing, there's no The Searchers,
right?
But she's not in it very much. Her character is not all that compelling. And when you catch up with her, I actually, her character work was questionable to me. Because you see her at this point where she's so devoted to still remaining in the Comanche tribe under Scar, to later on when they had a clear cut break. Like they could have made off with her, and they would have never even known the difference. But she fights to stay, and then they go back for her, and this time she's all gung ho to go.
Right.
You're like, so what changed? What was the difference between last time to this time? Because the Comanche tribe had not become more or less violent. They had not become more or less loving towards her. They had not become more or less like a home to her. So what changed?
Yeah, and that's maybe one of the things where, even when you talk about things that I kind of struggle with in this film, is there's so much that takes place off screen, and it's still a 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
But the stuff that you're like, this is the stuff I wanted to know, but they don't show. And then they have so much of this romance between Martin and Lori that is compelling enough, but it's so separate and so out of place. And the Comanche tribe, they've gone through all this length to get the men in the town, the protectors, away so that they could come and they could attack Ethan's family and burn their home and kill him and his wife and their son and take their daughters away. But we really aren't offered any explanation as to why they would have gone to these lengths. I mean, is Scar just that? Are we to believe that he's that savage of a chief that they just steal one homestead's cattle so that they can go and destroy another? That was the biggest question really right out the gate that this film left me with. Just there along with Debbie, where we're like, what switched in her to where she was so ready to stay with Scar and with the Comanche, and now she's so willing to go back with Ethan? Was it the way he picked her up? Was it that she thought she could be free this time, but she didn't think that she was free enough before. I mean, the film doesn't really give us that explanation. And do we need it? Maybe not. Maybe it's one of those things where we take it at the face value of the film. Or maybe it is one of those things where we did need this information, but we're just not going to get it. We have to be okay with what we got. It just seemed weird that there was so much of the romance between Martin and Lori that didn't really drive the main part of the story, but these really big questions that are connected to that main part, to that kidnapping, and to that rescuing, that we're kind of left with things that we just have to accept as this is the way it was. So that's another one of just those qualms that I had with the film as I've wrestled with it the past 24 hours or so, really thinking through how it lands for me.
I think those are, I mean, very believable, legitimate qualms to have with the story. I think that it's kind of the blessing and the curse of the searchers, because as I mentioned before, when you begin the film and you're left with so much off-camera information, so much so for me at least, you're thinking it's a sequel, right? Mm-hmm. But now but it serves the story really well, and it helps you really get immersed into this world because it feels as though it's already existed,
right? And
that you're not coming upon a world building. It's like you're stepping into a world. And so for them, for the rest of the story, the things that happen off camera, it doesn't work as well. You're kind of left to fill in the gaps, and it's because you've been following this story, or you've been following this plot, or you've been immersed in this realm. And that's not always a bad thing, but it is whenever you're left wondering what the heck is going on? Why am I not being shared this information? Because I think it's one thing to not share information until it's the proper time, but to not share information at all makes it a little bit tough to follow.
Yeah.
So I think that is really, other than some of the heinous acting, I would say that's really more or less where the film doesn't work as much for me. Mm-hmm. Again, that being said, I'm still giving it 4 stars. It's still a great palate cleanse from Ogambo. And it just goes to show you that he still had some left in the tank to make something truly, it is iconic. It really is, because you'll think, as we'll get into some of the most quotable lines of all Western history, it still is one of those things where you're left in awe of what you're watching, the VistaVision, the beauty of it, the motifs that this world is able to employ with doorways, right? And the imagery, the themes that they're interweaving through every moment. It's still so high, it's so well crafted that you can't help but give it the credit that it deserves. And at the end of the day, when you're a pioneer, you're going to make mistakes.
Right.
You're going to do things that are not going to serve it well. But for these characters, it's unfortunate because the best array of characters we've gotten to this point is Stagecoach. And I think we might have peaked. I don't know that we're going to reach another array of characters that are as compelling, right?
Yeah. It kind of whole, I think you're correct. I mean, that's what it seems to be at this point.
I think that you had the array of characters, each one as strong as the next in Stagecoach. My Darling Clementine, you had 2 amazing characters you could hinge your story on in Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday. In Mogambo, Eloise Kelly, I guess. Ava Gardner's character, she's interesting. I like her. She, was nominated for an Oscar. Pretty incredible. But here, you do get back to a little bit of it, right? Yeah, with John Wayne's Ethan, who is truly remarkable. And unfortunately, as we discussed, talking about him at the top of our character section, he is the only one really worth mentioning, really worth talking about. Everyone else does pale in comparison, despite how goofy or eccentric or as emotional or as over the top as they may be.
Right.
For some, it might work. and there will be others who will tell me we're wrong, right? For not really investing in these characters. But you tell me you have a force as strong as Ethan on screen and you're invested in Lori. You're not. You're not. You're not going to be invested in Charlie, or was his name Mose?
Yeah.
The other,
Harper.
yeah, Mose Harper. Like, great, good for him, I guess. I really didn't. He was such a nothing character to me as well. I mean, he's funny, he's fascinating, he's they're the Reverend, right? Yeah. I literally until right now forgot about the Reverend because they just don't matter as much, right?
Right.
And yeah, I think unless you have something else to add to the character section, I think we're good to move into our quotables, our dialogue choices, the writing. But yeah,
it really is sad that, this is a film that lives and dies on John Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. And if you can't get behind who Ethan is in this film, it's not going to work for you. It's the reason why you look up reviews of people who have watched it today. You go on the Letterboxd and you watch all the pretentious, snooty film fans and see all their ratings, and you're like, 2 stars for The Searchers, 2.5 stars, 1 star. And it's basically you couldn't get past John Wayne. You couldn't get past the way that he spoke and the way that he acted. You couldn't understand that was this time and that was this character and that was the 1800s. And really, if you can't get to where you love John Wayne in this film, which I'm with you, this might be Wayne's greatest performance. Mm-hmm. I've not seen a lot of Wayne. This is maybe the 3rd film I've seen of his. It's the 2nd that I can remember. I'm sure I saw a glimpse and pieces of him as a young child. I'm at my grandparents' houses or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were to tell, I'm not going to argue with anyone who says this is his best role. I think it might be.
He thinks it is.
Yeah. Is it my favorite? You'll have to ask me at the end of this marathon.
Mm.
But is it his best? I'm not going to argue with him on that. It very well might be. Just Lori, we won't talk about her very much. There was a moment where I had hope for her. And it was actually really interesting because my wife mentioned it too. She was like, is she wearing jeans? It's in that first, that morning where it's not the day that they come back, the day that Wayne and Martin get there, but it's the morning after, where Lori's trying to convince Martin to stay. And she's there and she's cooked breakfast and all that. And she's wearing jeans and a button-up shirt. And I know for my wife, that was so bizarre because she was like, did women in this time wear jeans? And then there was a level of sass that Lori brought in that moment, even to the point where she like pushed him over and he falls over the bench and the whole thing falls down. Where the way that Lori's character was going, I was down for it. I wanted to discuss her as a Ford female because in that moment I was like, oh, she's up there. She's going to try to rival Dallas. No, nobody's going to touch Dallas. That's just, I knew that even, but she's going to go up there and she's going to be up there with Dallas in the top Ford females. But then after that scene, it's kind of like you said, she got annoying. She got maybe annoying is not the right word. Grace Kelly and Mogamba was annoying. This wasn't quite that, but she lost the spunk. She lost the Ford touch that I thought she was going to have from that opening scene. Because then she has it the night before, in the scene before, with the bathtub, where Martin's in the bathtub and she walks in and he's all embarrassed and she's like, I've had brothers. You're not going to show me anything that I'm not seen before. So get over yourself. And she seemed like she had that Ford spunk. And then she lost it after Martin left the first time. And it never came back. And I didn't have the same disdain for her that you did. But I understand where you're coming from because she lost everything that it was starting to build in that moment was gone after those scenes. The Reverend, he was kind of nothing. Like, he's interesting when you look at I wanted to maybe talk about the duality of his character, being the Reverend and being a captain and being the law and being faith and And then you've got the wedding scene where he's like, right now I'm the preacher, but after this is done, I'm going to have to take you in as the sheriff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting, and that's an interesting discussion. But at the same time, I don't know that I want to spend a lot of time there because he does kind of feel, again, like you said, empty. Scar and the Comanche, they're interesting. Scar's an interesting villain. We just don't get much of him. And really, it's kind of the curse of a Western, right? All of the Indians are always painted with one kind of big, broad brush. There's not really a lot of room for them to be characterically developed because that's not what a Western is. Even today, Westerns, they don't really delve into that aspect. Like, they could, should, I don't know, you can use whatever words you want for that. And then Mose provided a lot of laughs. He provided a good little bit of humor. But you're right, outside of that, outside of being kind of this comic relief, that's all he is. Even in a way that the Stagecoach driver is the comic relief in Stagecoach.
Yep.
But there felt like there was more to his character.
Yep.
There was more humanity. There was more of a meaning to him being there. His humor felt like it came from a genuine place of who he was versus where Mose feels like the comic relief. And the genuineness of Mose really wanting that rocking chair is almost kind of missed, either in the writing or the portrayal, or whatever, the direction, whatever else you might call it. So yeah, as a ensemble film, as a Western film, as a cast of characters, we peaked in Stagecoach. Now, I can't say that for certain. We've got 2 more films, one of them being another John Ford Western, another one of Ford's tentpole films. So that could change. We could find another, but really, The Searchers lives and dies on John Wayne's performance and on the character of Ethan. And he's really one that if you can't get behind him, if you can't enjoy him, if he bothers you or offends you in any kind of way, The Searchers won't work for you. Because it breathes and relies 110% on Wayne's performance.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. No comment. I feel like you really hit the nail on the head. I think that you've established the other characters even more than I wanted to because I just was disappointed in their lack of character.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I think it's time to talk a little bit about dialogue, talk a little bit about some of the popular quotes, the lines that maybe stood out to us, the lines that maybe mattered the most.
Yeah.
And so why don't you...
All right. I didn't actually have, looking through this film, even a lot of dialogue, which I don't know if that means there wasn't anything as memorable. I don't know if that means maybe I was super invested in the story that I just didn't take the time to write the dialogue down. It could be either one of those. Of course, there's the recurring line I realized as the film went on, that'll be the day. You get it first when I believe it's the preacher, I believe it's the reverend who asks Ethan, "You want to quit?" And Ethan goes, "That'll be the day." And I didn't realize until we got to the end of the film, or later on in the film, that's a recurring line. Mm-hmm. That's a recurring motif of Ethan's, "Oh, that'll be the day." So that's, I think, the line of the film. Just because of how repetition, how that line relies on just that repetitiveness. You see that in Ethan's character. He's not going to quit. He's not going to let anybody else tell him what to do. He's not going to let somebody get the leg up on him. And if they do, that'll be the day that you fill in the blank. That'll be the day that the world's come to an end. That'll be the day that he eats his hat. That'll be whatever. That'll be the day.
When Marty says, "I hope you die," mm-hmm. and he said, "That'll be the day."
That'll be the day.
Like as though he has this understanding of his mythos of like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to die.
Right.
Ethan won't die. And it's almost said with a disdain that is, he believes it and he's sad about it. He's
Mm-hmm.
sad that he believes he won't die because he, in a way, probably wants to.
Yeah.
And I think that really, he adds that level of flair in just the line delivery of that'll be the day, right? And if you've ever heard or watched anything, if you watched any other movie that references a Western, that quote is likely to come up, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was not the first time I'd heard that quote, right?
Yeah.
And it was funny because I didn't know that's where it was from. So when I watched it and I saw that line, I was like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where I was like whistling, pointing, like, oh, there it is, I caught it, I see it, and I realized like, oh yeah, this is a recurring line because he says it continuously, not
Yeah.
just at the beginning, but even till the very end, as you said. So I think it's a great line. I think it's a good way too to establish more about who Ethan's character was
Yeah.
and just the way he spoke, right? Not just what he did, but the things he said and why he said them and how he said them. And so I think that that's why this character means so much to John Wayne, is because it was so well written, and not
Mm-hmm.
just in what he did and who he was, but what he said. And so I think that's a great dialogue choice, right? He even
Yeah.
has a line early that is really not like super integral to the story, but he says, "I'll whoop you to a frazzle." And
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was a really funny line. I was like, that's such an interesting way to put that.
Yeah.
I'll whoop you to a frazzle.
I'll whoop you to a frazzle.
And I
That's what I'm
thought,
gonna
wow,
go
that
with.
I need to bring that back. I'm going to start saying that to my son when he starts talking back when he gets older. I'll whoop you to a frazzle. He'll be like, "What the?" What? So I can't wait to
I would
do
love to
that.
see that.
I don't know if you caught this line. I'm assuming you probably did or appreciated as well. Is
Okay.
there's a line that said where the Reverend offers to pray,
Mm-hmm.
and John Wayne's character says, "No more time for praying." There's this element of him that he's so cynical towards faith. He's so cynical towards there being a higher power that they could rely on. Like, we need to act now. There's no more time for
Yeah.
praying.
Yeah, that's there at the funeral scene.
Yeah.
And then where they've just buried his brother and the wife and their son. Yeah.
And it really is, you understand his sentiment. You understand where he's coming from. And you get the anger, you get the frustration, and in some ways he could be right. He could be right that you need to move. Like, we don't need to be sitting around here anymore. Like, if we're going to get anything done, we need to move.
Yeah.
And there's no more time to sit around and hope and pray. We need to take action to accomplish our goals that are set out before us. We need to search. We need to become the searchers. And I think that's a great line for his character, especially. You sense it within him, right? This angst that he has.
Yeah. The only other line that I had that's worth maybe mentioning, other than it being something like funny or a little comical or whatever, there's several a recurring line for Mose is, "Well, thank you kindly."
Mm.
In that first scene where Mose is, I don't know if it's the Reverend or if it's one of the other men that are there with them trying to deputize Ethan's brother, but one of them says to Mose, they say, "Shut up, you old fool." He says, "Thank you kindly."
Yeah.
Which, as much as, well, that'll be the day, is telling of who Ethan is. That "thank you kindly" is very telling of who Mose is. But that
Yeah,
was just
absolutely.
one of kind of funny, kind of comical, whatever. The other line that was significant to me, which we had a little bit of this in Stagecoach, I thought too, this kind of same feeling that this line gave. But it is where the Swedish wife, it's the first time Ethan and Martin have come to their house, to the home of Lori and her parents. And the wife, she goes on this whole spiel but she sums up her sentence, her TED talk, I guess, if you will, by saying, someday this country is going to be a fine, good place to be. Maybe it needs our bones in the ground before that time can come.
Someday this country's going to be a fine, good place to be. Maybe it needs our bones in the ground before that time can come.
And that was kind of like the lines even in Stagecoach, where it talks about the country and what the country needs and all those kinds of things. And that one really struck me kind of as somebody younger with older parents and grandparents coming up, and that feeling of, this is an old woman, not really near the end of her life. She's probably 60s, maybe pushing 70. She can't be that old. Her daughter's mid to late 20s. But just that belief, one, that someday the country's going to be great. And maybe for it to be great, the old ways have to die off. We have
sacrifices have to be made.
Yeah. And I thought about that line when it played, and I was like, I don't know that we're there yet. I mean, there are a lot of things about our country that I would rather live here than anywhere else in the world. There are a lot of things about our country that are great. But there are a lot of things, even when I look at some of the older people and the more traditional people in my own life, just in my own circle, and some of the ways they view the world, that it's not, I want them gone, but it's, your ideas need to be buried. So that a new generation of ideas, right or wrong, recognizing that our generation has plenty of flaws in the things we believe and the things that we think, plenty of things that we could learn from the generations that have come before us, and that maybe we should. Welcome to my TED Talk. But anyways, that line struck me for that reason. Thinking about the older ways that are in the people in my life, that I'm like, that's not quite right. Or you're missing another picture. And it's not that I want you to go, but it's like, man, it'd be great if your ways, if your beliefs could kind of just go in the ground.
Yeah.
And give us a chance to mess the country up, I guess, is kind of the way the line left me feeling. That's kind of the way it seemed like she was saying it. That our ways need to be gone so that better ways can come. Our cynicism, our racism, our elite views of us versus them, or whatever it was, that needs to go away so that our children can make this country a fine and good place to be.
No, I think that's a brilliant line to take from it. I think that line does have a lot of resonance. And I do think that you could argue in every Ford film we've watched to this point, there's always a line that has a gravity to it, right? And I think that that's the line of this one. And even if it's not the line that I gravitate towards as far as thinking about writing down, utilizing, even the philosophical nature of it, it's not one that I hang my hat on at the end of the day. It is the line of this film, in my opinion. And you could go through all different kinds of like character lines. Another character line of Ethan is, I don't believe in surrenders, right? This idea of that's who he is, right? He does not believe in surrenders, which could mean one of two things, right? I don't believe in surrendering, but I also don't believe in allowing other people to surrender. I believe in taking their choice from them, right? Sort of that, I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. Sort of that, oh, the offer is going to be so good you couldn't possibly refuse it. Or I'm literally not going to allow you to refuse the offer, right? There's that double layer of meaning there. Right. But the line that stuck out to me the most, that it's said very early on, I think it's because it comes from a child.
Okay.
And it's right when he comes back, Ethan comes back, and he's sitting around with his family in that beautiful home. Good night. What a again, I could talk about the atmosphere of this film till the cows come home. Legitimately. It's such a cozy film, especially at the beginning before all hell breaks loose. But they talk about him discussing the war.
Yeah.
And he said, well, the war was over 3 years ago. And that's when his nephew says, well, why didn't you come home until now? What kept you? And it's asked with a sense of like pure curiosity, like, oh, well, what are you doing? Why did you take so long?
Right.
But Wayne's response of sitting in that chair, just kind of looking down at the ground, like, I can't answer that. I think that that is one of the hardest moments of the film for me to watch with him. And it's the part that if you are going to be empathetic to John Wayne's character, it's going to be there.
Yeah.
Right? If you're not, you'll never be empathetic towards him. There's nothing else that he goes through, because you see him in that moment of like, okay, I could appreciate you. I could sympathize with what you've gone through, why you've decided not to come home until now. Because maybe you're guilt-ridden. Maybe you're not wanting to feel at home anymore because it could be taken away from you again, which it obviously is, right? And there's this element of, I don't want to taint these people with my cynicism. It could mean a whole number of things. And it's one of those lines that he doesn't say that, again, describes his character. So when you established and said, like, this whole thing hangs on John Wayne's performance, it really, truly does. Mm-hmm. Because if you're too proud to admit that you don't see at least a little bit of yourself in John Wayne's character, you're not going to get it. You think you're above all of the impure thoughts you've ever had. You think you're above the cynicism in your heart. You think you're above the trauma you've gone through. And there's an element that is, you're just better than that. You're better than John Wayne. You're better than Ethan.
Yeah.
And I think you're missing the point, because he doesn't legitimize Ethan's character. He never does. He never justifies his actions. You never see him in a heroic light. You really don't, until the very end, where he is a hero.
Well, and then even then, too, you get that heroic light of him carrying his niece home. But then what is it? The door closes and he's all on his own again.
Yep.
He had that brief moment of heroicism, whatever that word is. He had that brief moment of being the hero. And then he was back on his own. And it was back to his old ways. At least what we can assume was back to his old ways. Yeah,
or at least changed in a way of it. Maybe he's going to be alone again, but this time it won't be as cynical. Maybe he might see the world in a different light this time, despite the fact that there's still bad things that go on, right? And I think that leads us nicely into our themes, right, and our scenes of the movie.
Yeah.
Because I think that for me, the one thing I wanted to really touch on was something that I feel like you would kind of condemn in a movie if it were made today, but for it being made at the time that it was, you're actually more in awe of what they're able to accomplish. And for me, that's the motif of the doorway and the motif of the looking into or looking out to something. For example, the very opening shot, we have the doorway open. We're now being welcomed. We've been safe in this place, but now, because you know what happens to the family, the door's been open, and with him coming back, danger awaits, right? We've now been forced upon the dangerous territory of the land. Right. The elements that be, whether they be human or weather or unnatural, however that may look, that's what we've been exposed to. When he comes back and they're looking for the family, he looks into that cavern. Mm-hmm. And you're in the cavern, him looking at you. and he doesn't say anything, but someone goes to look, and I think it's Marty, and he protects him from looking. He keeps him from looking because he doesn't want him to see what's on the other side. Right now, not only have we been exposed to it, we're now in the midst of this chaos. Right, we're next door to the people who have just experienced this horrible tragedy. Right, and I think that you even see that later on, because at first it's a beautiful home that is breathtaking. It's a very just cozy, homey, safe place until it's burnt down. And so now you've gone from safe and secure to completely demolished, right? This sense of security out the door. Mm-hmm. And when you move down the way, you end up getting into the teepees, right? And now you're walking into a smaller home. You're walking into a more humble place.
Yeah.
But in the theme of the story, not how I view it personally, but the theme of the story is it's homes built for savages, right? Yeah. The other home was the Western frontier. It's the people who have worked hard and put, the world on their shoulders and have built for their family. And here you're coming into more small, humble, almost third world style building.
Yeah.
Right. And you see the difference in which they lived, the way in which these doorways are beautiful to the doorways not being so beautiful. So now we've been introduced not only to destruction and security, we've now been introduced to savagery and death. And I think for me, when you watch it, you notice it. Even if you're not looking for it, it kind of hits you in the face how often it has us either looking at a door, through a door opening, a door closing, right? Yeah. Even at the scene with Lori and Charlie, she's standing at the door as Marty has left, and he comes, or as she's finished reading the letter, and he comes to play that music for her at the doorway, right? Yeah. Leaving that door open for a future for them, right? And then, of course, the final shot. You have the final shot of the door being closed on not only Ethan's chapter, but for the film. And now we're back in a place where, while we were once exposed to the dangers of the elements, we are now protected from the dangers of the elements. Which, to me, John Wayne, of course, is the star of the show. But the themes and the motifs that John Ford is able to really evoke out of this is what helps this. You forgive the flaws a little bit more because of how high the highs are in this film.
Yeah, you definitely do. I mean, the artistry of the film. I mean, it's if you're not watching it for John Wayne, you're watching it for the beauty. You're watching it for the artistry. You're watching it for those beautiful images that John Ford is able to paint with the camera, with the help of his cinematographer, and just the way that they bring you into this world and then they put you out of it. And it's even thinking about that final shot with the door closing on Ethan. As it's protecting us, it's also isolating him. Once again, it's like they come in, Lori comes in, Marty comes in, Debbie comes in, the parents come in, the family is whole again, and that door closes on Ethan. It's almost like you're no longer needed. We don't need your services. We're not interested in buying Girl Scout cookies. Goodbye. And he's shut out there. Maybe you could argue with the danger and with the savagery where perhaps he belongs. And just the way that it is crafted. Visually, the doors and just all the other, the ideas it takes on. You've got the motifs of the doors. You've got this idea of obsession, of John Wayne's obsession to find Debbie, which again, we've talked about possible reasons. Maybe there's the theory that she's his daughter. Maybe there's the idea that he just so is fueled by revenge that it's not even really about Debbie. You could argue that in the moment where he's ready to kill her. That it's not even about her. It's about purifying. It's about taking revenge on the Comanches. It's about purifying the land from them. And the way that the film really engages with these heavy ideas of social purity, of racial purity. I mean, the idea of Debbie being no longer worthy of rescue or of life because she's become a Comanche. It's like, and it seems that to Ethan, she is now dirty. She is unpure. She is no longer, he even says something along the lines of, that's no longer my niece. And those ideas of she's become the other and therefore she's not worthy. Lori even has a line somewhere along the lines of she's defending the decision to kill Debbie.
Yeah.
And she says it's what Martha, I believe Martha is who it is. It's what Martha would have wanted.
Yep.
As if being a Comanche is so bad that Martha, I believe, is her mother.
Her mother, yeah.
Martha would rather of her daughter have been dead than have become a Comanche. And that's a lot of what people can take issue with this film, right? Is the way that it just paints the racism, the idea that this film and these characters are racist. And I guess maybe that's a that's a great question for two white guys to kind of delve into, right?
Love it.
Is this film and are these characters inherently racist? Or is this a picture of what the time was? Now, is it perfectly painted? And I guess I'll just go ahead and answer the question from my end, and then I'll let you take a stab at it. Is it perfectly balanced from all sides? No, it's not. It's very much from the white man's, the settlers, the Texicans, as the woman would say, perspective. It's very much from the perspective of the white man. But as most even modern, past 20 years or so, Westerns are, you rarely get a Western that's from the perspective of the Indians, of the Native Americans, of the red man. It is always told from the perspective of the white American cowboy hero. So part of that is part of the genre of the film. But then to the question of, is this film racist? I think that to say that is unfair. I think to say that is to miss the point of, because you think, one, yes, the film's made in the 1950s. We as a society had a better understanding of what was racially prejudiced and what was more accepting and an understanding of different races and all that kind of stuff. Great. We still didn't have a very good grasp of it. We still probably don't today. But this film takes place in the 1800s. So I think to put our 2026 view of racism on characters set in the 1800s is maybe not even a foolish attempt or a foolish practice, but it's just wrong. We can't look at it that way. And I think to get all angry at this film because it's a racist film, because Ethan is an Indian hater, because of XYZ reason, I think that's to miss the deeper point. Of the way that not only it's capturing the life, but like you said, it's capturing the pain. The Comanche, these Indians, have brought a lot of pain into Ethan's life. Not only with the destruction of his family, but even before then, we get the feeling that he's had run-ins with multiple Indian tribes and probably fought wars against them. That these people have brought so much pain into his life that it's hard for him to see them as anything but other. Even when it comes to Marty, and some of the first moments he has with Marty and some of the things he says, about how he looks like an Indian, or he's not family because he's Indian, or whatever it is. When you take a step back from our eyes and going, oh, that's bad, that's wrong, that's XYZ, you realize that's Ethan's pain that's coming through. That he speaks and he feels and he treats these people in this way because he has been so deeply hurt. And then, of course, you've got the whole idea of the film is called The Searchers. I mean, Ethan is searching. And you can read from the blurb you read at the top of the show to just other synopses of the film that you can find. Ethan's really searching for his humanity.
Yep.
I mean, that's ultimately what this film comes down to. And in those final moments, you get the hope that he's found it. In the moment where he lifts up Debbie, and instead of attacking her or instead of shooting her, he embraces her and he holds her like she was a little child. You get the feeling that some piece of his humanity has returned. And that, to me, and then I'll let you go ahead and close out with any final thoughts that maybe you have. To me, that's really the point of The Searchers. It's going on this journey of working through and pushing through the things that have broken you, in the way that Ethan has been broken, and that search for who are you going to be now. It's that search for the humanity within yourself. It's the search for where is there any compassion or empathy or purpose left. I mean, John Wayne was a soldier who fought on the wrong side of the Civil War, and he has been drifting 3 years purposelessly. And perhaps that's part of the reason why he becomes so obsessed with finding Debbie, is because that this quest, this odyssey, as I've seen other places this film being compared to, this story being compared to, has given him a purpose in his life that is driving him. And then now at the end of the film, we're left to wonder, well, what's next for Ethan? What's his next purpose? Where is he going to go searching now? Has he found what he was looking for? And then even more so, have we found what we're looking for? Or are we still searching for our purpose in this Wild West world? So that was a lot deeper than I intended to go this evening, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it to you with that. Any final thoughts with themes or ideas that this film tackles?
No, I think you said it really well, and I don't, at risk of watering down your points, I don't want to add a lot. I think that you hit on the head a lot of what really resonates with the people who find the value and the merit of this film. Those who are willing to acknowledge, and I don't mean look past, because you're not looking past a flaw. Because I think that, like you said, it's to argue that them talking about how people were treated back then as racism is like that being a reflection of us justifying it when it was made. That's not what they're doing. John Ford is not saying, hey, it's totally okay for you to be racist towards Native Americans, and it's totally okay to hate people of a different tribe. That's not the point of the movie. And even in the movie, it's not justified, right? When you hear Lori say it, Marty is against it, right? Not just because it's his sister, but because even after he gets, I don't even know how you want to say it, like unwillingly, unaware that he's engaged and now married and to this, Native American woman, they call her Look, right? That she's willing to be called Look. And I don't think that that's a coincidence. It's like, look through my eyes, look at me, look and see what I see, right? Look to the future, look to the past, however you want to infer it, right? when you find out that she's been killed later on, even though Marty didn't want to be, unwittingly engaged to her or married to her, and even the way he treated her, they didn't treat her well, right? They treated her poorly. But when she died and she was killed, he has this moment of, man, why did they kill her? Why did they do that to her? She didn't deserve that, right? And you see, for John Wayne, Ethan's character, it does go past. It's deeper than racism, because he is willing to kill someone who's could possibly be his own daughter, right? It has nothing to do with race at that time. At that point, it has to do with his mentality. It has to do with how he views race, in the sense that it's deeper than skin color. It's deeper than where you came from. It's a mentality.
Yeah.
But I think that when you watch the scenes that take place in this movie, any scene with Ethan, especially one near the halfway point where he has to tell Marty what happened. He's like, you didn't see, I think it's Marty. He said, you didn't see Lucy. You didn't see her because I saw her and I wasn't telling you.
She was wearing that blue dress and she was...
What you saw wasn't Lucy.
Oh, but it was, I tell you.
What you saw was a buck wearing Lucy's dress. I found Lucy back in the canyon.
And he's like, well, he's like, what do you want me to do? Paint you a picture? Like, what do you want me to do? You want me to describe in heavy detail what happened to her? I held it from you. And it's like, you see him, like, some could argue it's poor acting, but I actually think it's really well done restraint of who Ethan is like, he does care. He does have that inside him where he wants to help people. And I think everything you've touched on was just brilliantly said. And I'm glad that we've been able to now watch 4 John Ford films. And another one, I'm glad that I could like another John Ford film again. It was nice to catch back up with what makes John Ford. I think the last few things I'll mention just on the side is, you see why he's known as the Horizon King in this film, especially.
No
His
kidding.
horizons are high and low, and you are just bewildered by what he's able to accomplish. And I think that at the end of the day, when you watch this film, I think anybody who stays the course and finishes it, from the first shot of seeing this man come to you in this state to a man leaving you in that state, hopefully you see that while he searched, he finally found. And even if you don't love everything that came in between, you'll at least love that bookend. So with that, we thank you guys again for joining us on another episode of the Pretentious Film Bros podcast, where we discuss John Ford's filmography, at least 6 films of them, and this week's The Searchers. Next week, or next time, we have a classic featuring one of my all-time favorite actors. I cannot wait to watch this film. This was maybe my most anticipated, and that is The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. This has been on my watch list for an eternity since I started watching movies. And I am so glad that I finally have a reason to watch it, that we'll get to discuss it in length. I have a feeling this could be my favorite of his. I think that I won't tell you which one it's competing with. I think you already know. But I am really hopeful that I can have, I hope that you appreciate it too. And I hope that we're able to come to it with a similar expression, because I feel like the last couple, we've not been on the same page. I don't think we've been on the same page entirely. Like, yes, we both kind of appreciated this one. Mm-hmm. Mogambo, I think, well, maybe Mogambo we were more on.
No,
maybe
we were on the same page.
Maybe it was more maybe a positive page is what I'm hopeful for.
Right.
Because My Darling Clementine, you definitely weren't as positive on it as I was. But I'm hopeful that for The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance that we'll be able to pick back up in that positivity. And then after that, we only have one more.
We do,
and
it's probably an underseen one.
And that it's
sure.
crazy that we're getting to that point. But yeah, we thank you guys again for joining us. We always recommend you watch other podcasts such as Film Spotting, such as with Adam and Josh, such as their sister podcast, The Next Picture Show, Blank Check with Griffin and David. And if you're looking for film essayists, I always recommend The House of Tabula. I think they're an excellent film essayist. Thomas Flight, like Stories of Old. Those are all great film essayist channels if you've not seen them. And so until next time, when we get to discuss The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, it'll be in 2 Mondays. That'll be the day.
That'll be the day.
Let's go home, Debbie.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
I'm finished.